Hey buddy, it's Peter and this is the 2025 Kawasaki Z900RS SE or Z900RS SE if you are American. Now I own the 2022 version of this bike, but I think it's important to review it in 2025 because the context of this bike has drastically changed since the time I bought it. So we're going to talk about what this bike is, how it sits in the marketplace today, which is different than it was in 2022 when I bought mine, and we're going to talk about what's to come. And we're also going to let you know if it's right for you. So right now I'm filming at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports. This is the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country. It's the middle of February right now, and there are Kawasaki bikes as far as I can see. They will have everything I could possibly want to film here, and if you're in the area, you got to come check them out. Even right now, you can put your name on a bike like this right now, but if you're not in the area, they give me complete access to their entire product line. So you'll see me coming back to bikes again and again with your questions to create a full video database of all the information you need. I don't just film Kawasaki, I film all kinds of stuff. So if you want the context of all these bikes, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, and actually the best way to help me is just watch to the end. That makes a huge difference to me. So thanks everybody for watching. Let's get going with this review. All right, so let's put this bike into a class, into a category. Now, in the past, I'll stand by this, but I'm gonna modify it. So in the past, I have called this a modern sport bike with retro styling, and I'll stand by that. But I think a more accurate way of describing this SE model is this is really more of a muscle bike sport bike in the sense that muscle cars have kind of changed to sports cars over time. So a true muscle bike would have been in the past something that didn't really handle very well. This bike does handle well, but so do modern muscle cars for the most part. Now this one with the Olin suspension, the retuned front suspension, and a few other tweaks here and there, allow it, including Brembo brakes, allow it to really be something that performs very, very well and probably well beyond the ability of, almost definitely well beyond the ability of most riders. But the reason I would call it a muscle bike is it's really about the engine. The engine is spectacular on this, and I say that knowing that it is detuned, you could say, from the Z900. So when I say detuned, what they really do is they take away peak horsepower, they move the torque number. So peak torque on this and the Z900 is actually around the same, but it's 1,000 RPM earlier on this bike. Now they have a 12% heavier flywheel here, so the gear changes are a little different. They have a lower first gear, so it gets to that torque a little sooner. They have a higher sixth gear, so it's a little bit lower revving on the highway than the Z900. So it's a little less frenetic in that mid-range kind of thing, or a little less frenetic at the high end compared to the Z900, but it really is set up very, very well for a street bike with fantastic handling. Now, the Z900 has really changed for this year, so we're going to talk about that as well, because this bike hasn't really changed, and it may be the last time to get this bike in this flavor from the rumors I'm hearing, and there are some differences. So let's talk about what this bike is, and then we'll talk about what the Z900 is and why you may want to buy this year and not wait any longer until next year. Let's start at the front wheel. So taking a look at the front wheel of this bike, I always start at the front wheel because you can tell about the manufacturer's intent for this bike. Now this is interesting to me because first of all, it looks super cool. You still got the gold wheels and gold forks that you have to sort of complement the Olin shock. So that was standard on my, which the British call the yellow ball edition, which had the yellow and black paint. Now there is a yellow and green from last year that's a little different, but the SE model here has some unique things. Like I said, the front forks are tuned a little bit differently. The big thing you're gonna notice is radial mount Brembo brakes. The Brembos are standard only on the SE model. It really does step things up as far as feel goes. I think for most people, they don't need the Brembos. The other brakes are perfectly good. They're very, very strong. But I would say the feel is something you're going to feel every day. The part of the reason you would get Brembos is supposedly they're a little bit lighter. They can certainly handle multiple braking over and over and over again very hard. That's what Brembos are known for. And some of it's just to have the name. But there is a difference in feel of just Brembo brakes if you ride a bike with Brembo brakes and you don't. But you also have the braided steel lines. The braided steel lines are going to help you with that feel. So for most people riding this bike that aren't taking it to the track, the Brembos are really going to provide you just a little bit more precision in feel. But of course they are known for fantastic stopping power, and they really do have fantastic stopping power with a lot of control. You also have the upside down forks, fully adjustable here, so you've got all the ability to customize this, to tune it into the ride that you want. And one thing I will say is the ride on this bike is set up from the factory a little bit firm. Now again, firm like a sport bike. It's not soft like a retro bike. It really does feel like riding a sport bike, and I think that's a good thing. You can soften it, you can tweak it, you can do all kinds of things with the suspension, but I will say it feels like riding a sport bike. One little downfall on this bike, it's a couple little niggles I have with it after owning it. These are the Dunlop SportMax GPR 300F tires. They're the same tires as on the ZX or ZX4RR. I just reviewed that one. If you haven't checked it out, it'll be up online. Actually, it's probably up online already right now. And again, there's nothing wrong with these tires. I did wear through the rear tire a little quick, in part because I'd come out of a corner level, use that torque to pull out, and I would flatten that tire out a little bit quicker than it could. These aren't known for fantastic grip. They've been totally fine for grip on the road, but I do think you could upgrade and improve the feel a little bit, and that's what I plan to do with my bike. So again, nothing wrong with these tires, but in this class, there are better tires, and of course you have the standard sport bike tire sizing, 120 17s in the front, 180s in the back, so you can do that. Gold wheels look pretty cool. They're also known to be lightweight, and so again, you're getting the performance of a sport bike here. If you just looked at this, you would say full-on sport bike or even super sport bike. Taking a look at the heart of this bike, every Z900RS has this 4-cylinder 948cc engine. Now this is similar to the former 1000cc engine that was in the Ninja 1000 and Versus 1000. Now the Ninja 1000, Versus 1000 have stepped up a little bit in displacement as well. They're now in the Ninja 1100 and Versus 1100. I'll have reviews on the 2025 models of those when they arrive here at the dealership as well, so we'll take care of those. But this engine is awesome. It's super smooth, it's super torquey everywhere, but it still gives you all that torque and all that horsepower. Very rare to have that heavy, like strong mid-range torque and continue to rev out. Now, like I said, it does detune. It's around 110, 112 horsepower, depending on who you ask, compared to around 127, 125 horsepower for the Z900. So it is down on the top end power, but with a 948cc 4-cylinder engine, if you're driving on the roads, you're not driving at the top of this rev range for longer than split seconds because you will be so far beyond the speed limits. So again, unless you're taking this to the track, it really doesn't matter. Where it matters is all of that torque is now in the usable mid-range, and that's where this bike lives. This is a spunky bike. One thing that really surprised me about this bike is it really eggs you on to push further, and that's because all of that torque, again, 1,000 RPM lower than the Z900. Now what makes this unique is the fully adjustable Öhlins rear shock. This is something that I do think makes a difference. I find that you have so much more confidence going around fast, bumpy corners on this bike because the primary job of the suspension is not to give you comfort, but to keep that rear wheel in contact with the ground. And I find I can really push around corners, even with tires that admittedly aren't the best tires. You really have that grip and control feeling because this suspension keeps you in contact with the ground. Now you do have the remote preload adjuster right here, so if you add weight, whether it's luggage or a passenger, you can quickly spin that up. You do have rebound and preload and compression adjustments all in there as well, so a really nice setup here. You've got everything you need, but it does make a difference in handling to move to this. If you're someone who wants to drive sporty, I'd say move for the SE. You've got everything right from the factory. You really don't have to spice it up at all. But the engine itself is really a gem, even in its so-called detuned mode. And that's where you have to understand motorcycling a little bit. If you're running a 948cc bike at the top of its rev range, then yeah, the Z900 is going to be best. But you're only doing that on the track. On the road, this is a really awesome road engine. So aside from styling, one of the really good reasons to buy this bike is seating position. And if I sit across here, very familiar to me because like I said, I own this bike. This is a easy to reach the ground bike. It's, I'm about 6 feet tall, flat-footed easily. If you're shorter than me, you can handle it. And it doesn't feel that heavy for the bike it is. The weight is positioned well, and that's partly, again, this bike is designed with the weight centralization of a sport bike. Underneath here, everything is Z900, so it's all compressed and designed to be where you would want it. But the tank shape and the overall seating position is very, very comfortable, and that's what I like about this bike. You can drive it a long time. Now, you can get aftermarket windshields, and you can do stuff if you want to make this more of a touring type bike. Certainly, the engine is capable of touring, and that's where this gets interesting, because as I sit here today, this bike does not have cruise control. It does not have a quick shifter. The Z900 for 2025 will. So those are two things that I think should be on this bike in the future, because I think a lot of people are looking at this engine going, man, I could tour on that. It'd be nice to have cruise control. And being such a sporty engine, having a quick shifter is nice to have. However, this is probably the last year to buy this bike without that stuff. And one of the charms about this bike is when you sit here, the shape of the tank, the look of the gauges, which we'll show you in just a second here, the overall feel of this bike gives you the sense that you're driving a true, proper old-fashioned motorcycle. You haven't got the digital and everything else, so everything from pulling the clutch in, pulling it out, doing the gear shifts, everything feels, looks, and seems like the old-fashioned motorcycles. The only thing that doesn't seem like that is the fact that this is faster and has phenomenal brakes and phenomenal handling. So it really feels like you're a great rider on a retro bike when you're riding this bike, because the bike does so much to help you in your handling, in your braking, and in, of course, acceleration. So that could change next year if the Z900 changes come down to this. But for this year, you're still getting that true retro style bike. So let's pull you into the gauges, show you what I'm talking about, and then we'll finish up by talking about this, the Z900, and the overall class. I also want to show you the paint when we come in and take a look at this, because it's a pretty cool paint scheme. So taking a look at the paint scheme, compared to my 2022, first of all, this Kawasaki logo, that was an accessory or an option on mine through the Kawasaki accessories. I had the modern font. They've moved a couple years ago to the retro font, so that stays for 2025. This paint scheme is awesome. It's hard to show you here in the indoor, but you've got this sort of silvery, dark gray matte, but still metallic. And then of course the darker gray matte metallic here. And it just looks really good in person. It's not gonna show up as well on camera as it does on person, but you got the Z up there, really cool look. So I really quite like this. A lot of people really like the yellow of my bike, and I like that too, but I think this color is sort of along the same lines as one of my favorites with that. So we do have to look at the gauges here. Let's do that right now. We're gonna try to zoom all the way in here. Get a real tight look at them there, because I want to turn the bike on. This is a really nice setup. Now, you have the dials that do the full sweep there. I prefer the Canadian and European version with kilometers, because the American versions has the two lines, so it has miles per hour and kilometers. This one does not have miles per hour, and it has no option for miles per hour, but it really gives a clean dash compared to the Americans. So I really like that font. You can see that 10,000 RPM red line. But what I really like is you're getting the modern features you need without a TFT display that would distract or detract from the look here. So pretty simple stuff. You got a fuel gauge there, you got an odometer down there. We can switch through the odometer. You've got outside temperature. You've got fuel range left, which of course is calculated when you're riding based on how you have been riding. Average fuel efficiency, that's set up for kilometers per liter. You can do liters per 100 kilometers, miles per gallon US, miles per gallon UK, and that's the same for all of these things. So that's your average fuel efficiency. There's your instant fuel efficiency there. And then you have trip B, trip A, and we're back to our odometer. Up top above that, you've got a clock. You've got a really nice gear indicator there. And then you've got the traction control, KTRC, at the top right over here. KTRC is set to 1. That's what I would keep it in if you're riding this bike. You can turn it off completely, but level 1 is kind of not very intrusive at all, really. It allows you to have some fun with it. Level 2 is more of a rain type mode. That's what I would use there. You've got a temperature gauge on the right. So again, all the information you need is there in the center, but really what you're glancing at, other than maybe your gear position indicator, is these really nice gauges. Now the Z600 has similar gauges, but they're not the same. These are the nicest looking gauges I've seen, and I really, really like riding with this bike. So as we move over here, let's come over to the controls and how you work everything. Now, one thing I will say, both clutch lever and brake lever are adjustable, so you have the ability to sort of pick exactly the distance away that you want this brake or clutch lever or brake lever, so you can really have that grab point where you want it, or you can adjust it for different size hands. There's a little trigger over here to flash the high beam, so you have a fully modern LED high beam, and then fully modern controls here. Let's just zoom in a little bit here, come down a little bit. So typical Kawasaki stuff here, you're gonna have your flash to pass in that trigger that you can't see, lock your high beams on there, signal lights, horn light, four-way flashers here, and then you have the select button here. So when I was tapping up and down, that's cycling through the odometer, trip odometer, that kind of stuff here. Once you hit the select button, you can use this arrow key to select your traction control levels. So very, very simple controls to give you some of the advanced stuff, but nothing that's gonna really take away from some of that retro feel. Now this isn't designed to be a full retro bike. It's designed to be a modern bike with a retro flavor. So as we come across here, one thing I kind of like, a lot of Kawasaki bikes, I don't know if they did this on purpose, but a lot of Kawasaki bikes have that bright red kill switch there. This one does not have the bright red. The Z900 actually did the same thing, but it kind of looks a little more retro, almost like weathered a little bit. So I've had a number of people think that my bike is a very old bike that I've sort of upgraded, and it's not. This is how you buy it from the factory. Just kind of a cool look there as well. The other thing I want to show you is the top of the fork tubes. Let's just move the camera a second and we'll show you that as well. So you can see the top of the fork tube, center of your screen. We're going to zoom all the way in there, and you can see there's your fully adjustable suspension there. Hopefully we can get the focus right there. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Got the focus right there. So you've got fully adjustable suspension. Again, this is a proper modern bike. You can tweak things as you go. You can go through your owner's manual and bring it back to factory settings. It's really nice to be able to play with this, adjust it, tweak it the way you want it. If you're taking the bike like this to the track, absolutely you can really dial it in. But again, just the type of riding you do, the roads regularly go on, you have the ability to tweak front and rear suspension, and it really does make a difference. Now, there's one little niggle with this bike that I have that they still have not fixed in 2025. So the one problem I have, first of all, I'm not set up perfectly on the high beam there, or on the headlight here. It's not fully on unless the bike's running, but you do have the sort of the lower half is low beam, the upper half is high beam, so I can't flash it unless I run the engine. We're indoors, I'm not gonna do that today. So headlight, fantastic. Modern retro or modern design with the LED. You've got an LED taillight as well. All that works great. What I'm frustrated about is here in North America, we still have incandescent bulbs here. And what's interesting is 2025, I just saw the 2025 Z650, which will be on the channel very, very soon. It has LED signal lights. So for whatever reason, in North America, the Z900RS still has incandescent signal lights, which just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I guess it does kind of fit a retro kind of feel, but the shape certainly isn't retro, and I'm surprised they didn't move it in North America to the LEDs, especially since the European bikes do have LED signal lights. I don't understand it. For 2025, they haven't changed it. There must be a reason. I just don't know what it is. So let's talk about who this bike is for in 2025. Now, the elephant in the room is that the Z900 is going to be a phenomenal deal because, like I said, you're going to be able to get cruise control. You're going to be able to get the same suspension package on that. The Brembo, or sort of the Brembo brakes, the tweaked front suspension, the Olin suspension, all of that is available on the Z900 SE. And to the best of my knowledge, that's expected to come in at a lower price than this, with cruise control, with an IMU that it can have cornering traction control, cornering ABS, that kind of thing. So you're going to get, from a spec sheet perspective, a far better bike. It's going to have more horsepower than this because we talked about how the horsepower is set up on this bike. So the Z900 for 2025 is going to be an absolute class-leading bike in its naked category. Now, one thing it doesn't do is it doesn't give you this style. If you want that in this bike, my assumption, and I have not been able to confirm this by anybody official, but my assumption is that will trickle its way into this bike. Probably next year, maybe the year after. It will jack the price on this bike, and if those things don't matter, for instance, cornering ABS only matters if you're cornering and activating the ABS. If you're not doing that on a regular basis or not so worried about the safety of that, it's not going to make any difference to you. But things like cruise control, things like a quick shifter, they're nice to have, and as of this year, you can't get it on this bike. So, who should buy this bike? Right now, you have to want sort of like a muscle bike that handles well. This is one of the few bikes that Kawasaki makes where they've tuned the exhaust. It sounds great. Everything about this is retro in feel, in the sense that you're pulling the clutch, you're doing your shifting, you haven't got cruise control, you're doing it all yourself. Everything you look at feels that way, but because it's a modern sport bike, like I said, it makes you feel like a better rider than you are because you've got that retro feeling ride, but you can ride quickly, you can handle well, you can brake well, you can do all those things. It kind of makes you like a Superman of a rider, and that's what I like about this. It's that retro look that fits in with every kind of biker, but it gives you a really great ride. Like I said, the catch is, the elephant in the room is that Z900 is vastly improved for 2025, and it's always been a price leader. It's going to continue to try to hit a really good price point, which is going to make it compete with the greater market, but it is something that on a spec sheet will outperform this and on a price sheet will undercut this. So you are still paying for the price. You always are paying for the looks. You always have paid for the looks on this bike, and for me, I was fine with that. Does it change with the 2025? Well, that's what you have to decide. This bike, to me, is still a little bit more comfortable. It's still, in my opinion, a little bit more stylish. It really does give you the majority of the handling, if not all of the handling. The handlebar position is a little different. There's still the cafe model of this, which does put you an inch or two lower in the handlebars only. The seating position is basically the same, although the seat is different. I have a video comparing the seating positions on that on this channel. You can look that up. But I think it's interesting where this bike sits for 2025. Would I buy it again? Absolutely. Great bike that you can do so much with. However, it'll be interesting to see how this goes with this new Z900 sitting in the showroom, which we will have on this channel soon. Let me know, Z900, Z900RS, do you want this model or do you want this model with some extra features, which I would guess would come out in a couple years, maybe even as early as next year? Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. And again, if you want to follow this bike, I own it. I've done some riding reviews, done some other stuff. If you have questions about it, I'd be happy to answer your questions and do future videos with it. Thanks everybody for watching. Make sure you check out Wheels and Deals. Stop by their showroom. They're awesome. And again, we'll catch you in the next one.